They say every city hides a ghost, and in this one, it rides the bus. No one knows when the legend began. Some claim it started in the 1970s, when a tired factory worker swore he saw a man with no face staring out the bus window. Others say it was long before that, back when the city's night buses first began running the midnight route through the foggy outskirts. The story was always told in whispers. Parents would warn their children, "Don't stay out too late. Don't take the night bus. And if you must, never sit in the back." The tale goes like this. Somewhere between 12:15 and 3 a.m., a strange passenger boards the night bus. At first, he looks like an ordinary man, tall, dressed in dark clothes, his posture oddly rigid. But if you look closer, too close, you'll see it. His face is smooth, blank, like melted wax stretched over bone. No eyes, no mouth, no expression, just an endless nothing staring back at you. And the rules? Everyone in the city knows them. Never make eye contact, though there are no eyes. Never sit near him. His silence is not harmless. Never try to follow him off the bus, because he never gets off where the living do. Over the years, the stories piled up. A student on their way home from a late shift vanished after bragging about seeing the blank-faced man. A drunk was found wandering the streets days later, mumbling incoherently, his eyes vacant, as if something had scooped his soul out. And then there were the CCTV tapes, grainy black and white footage that showed the same tall figure, always in the last row, his head turned toward the camera. People still argue about it, of course. Some say it's just a local ghost story made to scare kids, or a trick of shadows on a dimly lit bus. But the drivers, the ones who work the midnight shift, they don't laugh. More than one has confessed in a shaky voice, "He rides with me every night. And when he does, I never check the rearview mirror." The night bus was always different from the others. During the day, the buses were crowded with chatter, footsteps, and the faint perfume of everyday life, coffee, sweat, and cigarette smoke clinging to coats. But after midnight, everything changed. The city seemed to empty itself, leaving behind only silence and shadows. The midnight bus pulled up to the curb with a groan, its headlights slicing through the fog. Only a few people ever boarded at that hour, shift workers heading home, students too broke for a taxi, drunks who'd missed the last train. They shuffled inside quickly, never making eye contact, always keeping to themselves. Inside, the world was dim. The fluorescent bulbs above flickered occasionally, buzzing like dying insects. The seats smelled faintly of damp fabric and something older, something stale, like the bus itself had been carrying secrets for years. The windows rattled as the engine growled to life, reflecting pale, tired faces against the glass. And then came the sound that every night rider knew too well, the hum of the engine, low and steady, broken only by the occasional hiss of the brakes. It was hypnotic, almost lulling. But beneath it, there was always a tension, a quiet awareness that the night bus wasn't like the others. Most riders sat near the front, close to the driver, where the glow of the dashboard lights felt like a kind of safety. The back seats? Always empty. No one wanted to sit there. Not anymore. They said the faceless man preferred the rear, always by the window, as if staring out into the darkness beyond the glass. Nobody ever saw him board. He was just there. One stop the back row would be empty. The next, he'd be sitting there waiting. Drivers swore they never noticed him climb aboard. And yet, when the mirror caught the faint silhouette of a tall, unmoving figure in the back, every hair on their neck rose. The bus rode through the sleeping city, past shuttered shops, empty intersections, and streets slick with rain. Every corner looked the same in the dark, and sometimes the passengers whispered. The bus seemed to drive longer than it should, like the route had stretched, warped, pulling them deeper into places that weren't mapped. And on those nights, they said, the faceless man always rode with them. It was just after 1 in the morning when Lena boarded the night bus. She was exhausted, her eyes stinging from hours spent at the cafe where she worked late shifts. The streets outside were nearly empty. Just the echo of her boots against the wet pavement and the hiss of the bus doors opening as if the vehicle itself was reluctant to let her in. She stepped inside, flashing her pass at the driver, who barely looked up. His jaw was tight, his hand stiff on the wheel. He didn't greet her, didn't nod, just stared straight ahead, as though afraid to break concentration. Lena frowned, but said nothing. It was late, after all. The bus was almost empty, just 2 other passengers slumped in the front seats, dozing quietly. She made her way down the aisle, tempted to sink into one of the middle rows. But something stopped her. Her eyes drifted to the very back. At first, she thought it was just a shadow. A tall, unmoving figure sat by the window, shoulders rigid, head slightly tilted, as though gazing at the blur of city lights outside. He didn't shift, didn't breathe in a way she could see. Just stillness. Something prickled at the back of her neck. She almost turned away, almost dismissed it as another late-night commuter. But then she noticed what was wrong. The reflection in the glass. The city lights caught his face, except there was nothing to catch. No eyes. No mouth. No features at all. Just a smooth, pale surface, like clay before it's carved. Lena froze in the aisle, her breath caught in her throat. Her mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe the dim lighting was playing tricks. Maybe he was wearing some kind of mask. But the longer she stared, the colder her stomach felt. The faceless man didn't move, didn't acknowledge her, didn't exist like a person should. A sound snapped her back, the thunk of the bus lurching over a pothole. She gasped and quickly dropped into a seat near the front, her eyes fixed firmly on the floor. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She told herself not to look again, not to turn her head, not to break the rules she had heard in whispers as a child. But in the reflection of the window beside her, distorted in the glass, she thought she saw him, still staring, still waiting. The bus rumbled back into motion, its wheels hissing on wet asphalt. Lena sat frozen in her seat, every muscle locked tight, her nails digging crescents into the fabric of her bag. The young man was gone, just like that, swallowed by fog, erased from the world. She strained to hear something, anything outside, footsteps, a shout, a sign that he was still out there. But the night was silent, as if nothing had ever existed beyond the bus. Her stomach churned. She wanted to cry, to scream at the driver to stop, to turn back, to call the police. But when she looked toward him, her blood ran cold. He wasn't surprised. His face was pale in the glow of the dashboard, his eyes fixed firmly on the road. But there was no shock, no confusion, only resignation, as if this was not the first time, as if he knew this was how the ride always went. And then she remembered the stories, the missing, years of whispered accounts, students, workers, wanderers who boarded the night bus but never got off at their stop. The city had explained it away with words like runaways, violence, or bad luck. But the people who truly knew, the ones who whispered the rules, they understood. The bus itself was a trap. Lena's phone buzzed suddenly in her hand. She jumped, her heart leaping into her throat. It was a message from her coworker. "Did you get home safe yet?" She wanted to answer, to type, "No, I'm not safe, something's here, help me." But her fingers refused to move. Instead, her eyes drifted unwillingly toward the back of the bus. The seat was empty again. But in the reflection of the window, distorted and faint, she swore she saw him still there. Not sitting this time, standing. Her breath caught. She blinked, and the reflection was gone. One of the passengers in the front seat suddenly stirred. A woman with tired eyes lifted her head, blinking like she'd just woken from a dream. She looked around in confusion, her lips parting as if to speak. And then she gasped. Her body went rigid, eyes locking on the back of the bus. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not again." Lena's blood turned to ice. "Not again." The woman's hands flew to her mouth, muffling a sob. And then, just as suddenly as the young man, the woman was gone. One blink, and her seat was empty. The space she'd occupied moments before was now hollow, as if she had never existed at all. Lena's stomach lurched. She turned toward the driver, desperate for answers, but he only tightened his grip on the wheel. His lips moved, mouthing words too quiet to hear. She leaned forward, straining to catch them. And then she realized he was reciting the rules. Lena's throat was dry, her hands slick with sweat. The rules circled her mind like a chant. Never sit near him. Never look too long. never follow when he leaves. And yet, the rules hadn't saved the others. The young man was gone. The woman was gone. And now Lena was the only passenger left. The bus groaned through the empty streets, deeper into places she didn't recognize. The familiar glow of the city was gone. No shops. No houses. Only fog and black road stretching forever. She pressed her forehead against the cold window, her breath fogging the glass. For a fleeting second, she thought she saw something outside, a flicker of movement in the mist. Figures walking alongside the bus, pale and featureless, keeping pace with the wheels. Their blank faces turned toward her. Her stomach dropped. The missing. They weren't gone. They were his now. The driver's voice broke the silence, low and hoarse, as though dragged from deep within him. Don't turn around. Lena froze. Her instincts screamed to obey, but she felt it, a weight behind her, a presence standing at the very back of the bus. The air was colder, heavier. She didn't need to see him to know he was there. The driver's hands tightened on the wheel. You look too long, didn't you? He asked, his voice shaking. He knows your face now. He always remembers the ones who see him. Lena's eyes filled with tears. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. Just stop the bus. Let me out. The driver gave a hollow laugh, broken and bitter. You think I haven't tried? Once you're on this bus, you ride until he decides. We're just passengers, same as you. The lights above flickered. The engine groaned. And then the bus slowed. The brakes hissed. The doors opened with a long exhale of air. Fog poured inside, curling around Lena's legs like cold fingers. The driver didn't move. He kept his eyes locked on the road ahead, lips still mumbling the rules like a prayer. Behind her, footsteps. Slow. Steady. Lena squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her cheeks. She told herself not to look, not to turn, not to follow. But when the footsteps stopped beside her row, she felt it, the weight of a gaze, though no eyes existed to give it. And then impossibly a voice. Hollow, distant, as though spoken from behind a wall of glass. Next stop. The world tilted. The fog surged. And Lena was gone. The doors closed. The bus roared back to life. And in the driver's mirror, the back row was no longer empty. The faceless man had taken his seat again, staring out the window at the endless night. Waiting. Always waiting. And still, if you ride the night bus past midnight, some say you might see him. A pale figure in the last row, head tilted toward the window. Don't look too long. Don't sit too close. Don't follow when he leaves. Because the man with no face still rides the night bus. And once he notices you, he'll ride with you forever. Lena's hands trembled in her lap as the bus rattled deeper into the night. She kept her eyes fixed on her phone, pretending to scroll, though her vision blurred from the pounding of her heart. The old warnings came back to her now, ones she hadn't thought about in years. As a child, she had overheard her grandmother whispering about him to a neighbor. The man with no face. The night bus ghost. The rules were simple, almost childish in their phrasing, but Lena could hear them echo in her mind as clearly as if her grandmother were sitting beside her. Rule 1, never sit near him. The closer you are, the stronger his presence grows, until you can feel him in your very bones. Rule 2, never look at him for too long. To notice him is to be noticed. And once he knows you've seen him, he does not forget. Rule 3, never follow him when he leaves. The faceless man does not walk where humans walk. His path does not lead to home. Lena swallowed hard. She had already broken one. She had looked at him. Too long. Long enough to see what she shouldn't. The thought sent a sick wave of fear through her. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it wasn't real. Maybe it was exhaustion. Her brain misfiring in the dim light of the bus. But every time she dared to glance at the reflection in the glass, she saw the same silhouette at the back of the bus. Still. Watching. One of the other passengers stirred in his seat, letting out a soft groan before shifting position. Lena felt a spark of relief. She wasn't alone. But when she looked at the man's face, her stomach dropped. His eyes were wide open, staring. His lips were moving silently, like he was whispering to himself. And then, very faintly, Lena realized what he was mouthing. The words synced with the ones echoing in her mind. Never look too long. Never sit too close. Never follow when he leaves. Her blood turned cold. The man wasn't asleep. He was reciting the rules. And behind him, in the last row of the bus, the faceless man shifted. For the first time, the bus rattled on, the city outside thinning into stretches of empty road. Lena kept her head bowed, clinging to the rules in her mind like a prayer. But not everyone shared her fear. At the next stop, the doors hissed open, letting in a blast of cold air and a single passenger. A young man climbed aboard, earbuds in, the glow of his phone screen lighting his face. He looked like the type who scoffed at ghost stories, the kind who thought the world was too modern, too rational, for old legends to linger. He glanced around the bus, lips curling at the sight of the half-dozing passengers up front. His eyes slid toward the back row, and then he froze, just for a moment, at the sight of the faceless figure by the window. Lena held her breath, silently begging him not to notice, not to go near. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. The man smirked. He shook his head, muttering something under his breath about Halloween masks and urban myths, then made his way deliberately down the aisle. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Seat after seat passed, closer and closer to the back, until he dropped into the row directly across from the faceless man. Lena's stomach twisted. She wanted to shout, to warn him, but her voice caught in her throat. The stranger leaned back casually, spreading his arms across the seat as if challenging the figure. "Nice mask," he said aloud, his voice breaking the bus's fragile hush. The faceless man didn't move, didn't react. The young man laughed under his breath, pulling out his phone. "Bet nobody's gonna believe this." He lifted the screen, pointing the camera straight at the blank, pale head across from him. But when he checked the photo, his smile faltered. The seat was empty. Confused, he looked up quickly. The faceless man was still there, sitting silently, head tilted toward the window. He blinked hard, snapped another picture, and checked again. Empty. "Okay, that's," he muttered, his voice less certain now. "That's not funny." He tried again. And again. Every photo showed nothing but an empty row of seats. Lena pressed herself tighter against her seat, her heart hammering. She knew the stories. Cameras didn't catch him. Only your eyes did. The young man's smirk faded completely now. For the first time, he shifted uncomfortably, staring at the faceless man's smooth, blank head. "All right," he said nervously, stuffing his phone back in his pocket. "Cool trick. Whatever." But it was too late. The faceless man turned, slowly, smoothly, as if his neck were made of something not quite human. And though he had no eyes, Lena swore she could feel him looking, directly, at the stranger. The young man shifted in his seat, his earlier bravado crumbling under the weight of that impossible gaze. Lena hugged her bag tight to her chest, trying not to breathe too loudly. The air in the bus felt heavier now, thicker, as if every inhale scraped against something unseen. The bus rolled deeper into the city's edge, past crumbling warehouses and long stretches of road, with no lights at all. Even the sound of the engine seemed muted, swallowed by the silence. And then, without warning, the bus jerked violently and screeched to a halt. Lena nearly fell forward, catching herself on the seat in front of her. The driver cursed under his breath, but didn't turn around. The doors opened with a hiss, though there was no stop, no passengers waiting. Just black road stretching into fog. The young man frowned, looking around. Are we supposed to get off here?" he asked, half joking. The driver didn't answer. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. And then, from the very back of the bus, came the sound. Step. Step. The faceless man was rising. Lena froze, her heart hammering so loudly she was sure the others could hear it. She dared to glance at the window's reflection. The figure was standing now, tall and rigid, its head angled unnaturally toward the young man. The stranger laughed nervously, pushing himself to his feet. "All right, man, enough of this. Cool prank, but I'm out." He slung his bag over his shoulder and started toward the doors. Lena wanted to scream, "Don't move, don't follow," but her throat was locked tight with terror. The faceless man stepped forward, following him down the aisle. His movements were wrong, too fluid, too silent, as though gravity barely touched him. The stranger reached the open doors and stepped down onto the pavement. "See? Nothing to worry about," he called, his voice breaking slightly. The faceless man stopped at the threshold of the bus. He didn't need to step outside. The fog seemed to curl toward him instead, thickening, swallowing the edges of the road. The young man turned, just for a moment, and looked back up at him. And that was the mistake. The faceless man tilted his head. The fog surged, and in an instant, both of them were gone. The doors hissed shut. The bus engine growled back to life. But where the young man had stood only seconds ago, there was nothing. Not even footprints. Lena pressed her shaking hands over her mouth to stifle a scream. Around her, the other passengers stared forward with dead-eyed silence, as if none of it had happened. Only the driver's reflection betrayed the truth, his eyes wide, glassy, locked on the road, refusing to look in the mirror. The faceless man was gone, but the seat at the back of the bus was empty again, waiting.